Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Take Two podcast. Today, Gabe and I are joined by Brady Cavanaugh. Was our first episode back after a long Christmas break, so it's good to be back. Good to be doing this again. It's our first not strictly Democrat or Republican guest, so that was fun, kind of picking out a topic. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Today we're going to talk about in the news section, we're going to talk about the attack on New Orleans, the Tesla Cybertruck that exploded outside of Trump's hotel, and then we're going to get into the two debates, both of which are about religion today.
With that, let's get into the news topics for today. Just a few hours after the new year, a pickup truck sped down the Bourbon Street in New Orleans. The truck hit multiple people, killing 14 and injuring dozens more. The truck was being operated by a U.S.-born Army veteran from Texas. FBI investigators say that the attack was a, quote, act of terrorism inspired by ISIS. Explosives were later found at the scene.
Later, on New Year's Day, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside of President-elect Donald Trump's hotel in Las Vegas. Investigators say the explosion was likely the result of a bomb. The U.S. Army identified the driver as Matthew Livelsberger, an Army Master Sergeant. Sergeant Livelsberger was in the truck and shot himself in the head seconds before the explosion. Investigators report that Livelsberger likely suffered from PTSD and also had family issues. He also left a note saying that this was not a terrorist attack, but a wake-up call. It's a really powerful message.
So something that we also just have not scripted here, because this was scripted. We plan on filming this on Tuesday. We're recording it on Thursday now. But there are some massive fires that are going on in the LA area, and I actually haven't done some research on it, or it's not scripted or anything, but just a good thing to note about the fires in LA.
Okay, so we're now going to go into the debate segment. As Thomas stated before, today we're joined by Brady. Brady, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brady Cavanaugh. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm Catholic and independent.
Thank you. So today we have two debate topics. We're going to spend 15 minutes on each topic. I'm going to act as the moderator for the first debate. I'm going to give a 5-minute warning. The debate will be open discussion and open note. To start, Brady will make his claim.
My claim is the Catholic Church is open to the LGBTQ community.
Great. I look forward to this one because I've done it a lot before. And I know that I've done it with your brother a lot too. So it's going to be super fun. So first, just a quick thing to point out is how, like, obviously restrictive the church is about homosexuality and how it's a sin. So before we actually get into any like making points, I just want to hear more of like your opinion on that.
So my opinion is that when you have like sexual acts, it should end in life. And that's why the Catholic Church would be against like homosexual acts or using, contraception, like condoms. They're against that. And like abortion, they're against that. Because again, the only reason you should really be having sexual acts is that they end in life.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So, and therefore, just to clarify, therefore it's a sin because, okay. So I'm curious to see how, if you're an LGBTQ Catholic, right? How would you say an LGBTQ Catholic feels accepted in the Catholic Church if they aren't allowed to have like a pretty crucial moment in their life through their religion of the sacrament of marriage?
Well, according to the Catholic Church in Catechism 2359, homosexual persons are called to chastity. So they should live their life without, going through sexual acts. And of course, a person like may be called like this sexual act is definitely a very like act of love. But the point of it would be to end in, procreation. And if this doesn't happen, it's more an act out of lust and wouldn't be love.
Okay, so so are you saying that homosexuals can only have sex out of lust and aren't out of love? I just want to clarify. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I guess they could think it's love, but the real reason they would probably be like anyone would be doing it. Like if I had sex but I used a condom, that would be out of lust because I'm not thinking about like making a kid. I'm just
Why does that result in just love? Like why is the result why is a loving sexual experience only possible by the creation of a child? Because there could be examples of even a man and a woman who where the woman can't give birth or the man's infertile. Like what's that part?
Well, it's more of the intent of making a child than actually the outcome of making a child.
What if you know that you can't have a child as a man or a woman?
That's a little harder, but you could also maybe be called a chastity. Like, I love you, Tom. Like, but that doesn't mean I have to have a sexual act with you to prove that love. Like,
So if a heterosexual couple knows that they're unable to produce children, is their sexual can they just not have sex?
oh, well, is it like impossible for them? I don't exactly know how like people can or can't have kids.
Yeah, so like for example, if the man was infertile or for other reasons, like just literally biologically they can't have children, they're unable to have children.
Well, I actually don't know like what the Catholic Church says about that, but I know the reason that they like don't affirm homosexual acts is because, quoting Catechism 2357, they close the sexual act to the gift of life.
Yeah, okay, so that didn't really answer my question, but that's okay. We can go on. So right here I actually have 2357 and the
Yeah.
whole thing. And I've talked about this before and how the Catholic Church says that they accept homosexual people.
Yeah.
It's just the act um of acting on that what they call homosexual tendencies is a sin. So right here it says uh that it's actually like you should treat everybody with respect. They must be, I'm quoting, they must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided, which is great and that's awesome. So the issue is that you see that which is like in a paragraph, and then the paragraph before it, it says that their homosexual acts are disordered and they are contrary to natural law. So how can you say that they need to be treated with respect, and then also say in the paragraph before that their natural instinct is disordered?
Well, Thomas, my natural instinct would be to have sex with as many people as possible, but that's also intrinsically disordered. And to say it's disordered is the same thing as saying every other sin is intrinsically disordered.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, but like if you're having a relationship out of love, you can't bar every sexual experience because it's disordered if it's like there's no way to have a kid. And that goes back to my previous point.
Well, to love someone doesn't mean you have to have a sexual experience with them.
In a relationship in a man and a woman. Okay, sure, yeah. But most likely the reason that they're barred from marriage and the reason that it's a sin is because they're, according to the church, they can't have sex, right? And actually, hold on. I'm curious, and this is just me. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Um, what's the reason that they can't get married?
Well, I would say probably to get married would mean that you're intending on having a child and that,
So what if there's a heterosexual couple who doesn't plan on having a child for financial reasons or for that they just aren't intending on having children? Because that's a thing. There are couples
yeah.
like not every single couple has children for various different reasons.
Yeah, again, I don't really know like the answer what the church says about that. From my experience, I guess it would be like a little harder to like answer because they could just be planning on not having like a child now, but not to have a child ever would also mean that they probably wouldn't have sexual acts ever.
That's
So
not
then,
necessarily true.
like, they would want to have sex but not have a child.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a good thing.
Well, I think that all right, I think this goes back to another thing where I would tell you that having a passionate sexual relationship doesn't need necessarily to result in children. And I think that just the act of sex, if you're truly passionate about it, is in itself an act of love
Oh yeah,
for each other.
it definitely is an act of love, but the point of that would be to end in childbirth, and that's kind of like. Let me think about it for a second.
For
How I
sure.
want to phrase my words.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you say what you said again?
Yeah, for sure. So like this is going back to marriage and how if like a sexual relationship and having sex is in and of itself a truly passionate relationship out of love for each other. And I don't think it necessarily needs to result in having a child for that, or to have the intention of having a child for that experience to be out of love.
Well, yeah, if you're married and you're having a sexual relationship, that's definitely also probably a loving relationship.
Yeah. So that like, how can you say that you just contradicted yourself because you
What?
said in a previous statement that if you're having sex, not have a kid, then that's out of lust, not out of love.
Well, yeah, I thought you were saying that they were intending to have a kid.
No,
Like
without
when they're
intention. I'm saying without intent, with having sex without intention to have a child, it's still in most cases a loving relationship between the couple.
well, yeah, even if they don't intend to have a child, that's a little different though.
So
Cause
is that lust then, or is that love between the married couple?
I'd say it's less because they're doing
Okay.
it more for the feeling.
Well, not necessarily. I think they're doing it to gain a closer relationship with each other, and to have that shared experience.
Well, there's other ways to have a closer relationship.
That's a pretty crucial way in a relationship, I would say.
I guess I've never had it, so I wouldn't really know.
Okay.
Like that close.
All right. I'm gonna bring up another thing, and this is just the definition of a marriage, and this isn't in the Catholic sense. And I'm kind of curious to see how they would contradict.
Really quick, we do have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, that was
Already?
quick.
Yeah.
All right. So the definition of a marriage is the legally or formally recognized union of two people as partners in a personal relationship. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but I would say it's more man and woman, and then just because if we go back to Genesis in the Bible, you remember God created man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my throat's killing me.
No, it's all right.
Man and woman to be joined as one, and like when they have a sexual act, they're joined as one again. As you know, like the story goes that Eve was made from Adam's rib,
Yeah.
and that in the sexual like act, you're joined as one again after like that separation.
Yeah. So there are also plenty of Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Genesis laws that aren't followed by the Catholic Church today. So the main key point of why Catholics and what they take from the Bible as, in my understanding at least, that uh, that is their like source for barring a homosexual relationship is Leviticus 18:22, Leviticus 20:13, which says that if you they'll fact check me if I misquoted this, but
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
they'll be stoned if a man sleeps with a man as with a woman, I think is what it says. And then also it's Corinthians 1:6, 9 through 10. So those are all different points throughout the Bible, but I could also bring up different points in the Bible, which to be honest, I don't have the top of my head right now, that are in like Old Testament laws, that, like, for example, about slavery,
Mhm.
that wouldn't be brought up in today's Catholic teaching.
Well, yeah. So I don't know exactly when I shift this all the way over to slavery, but you know, I bet you learned about this that there's a New Testament letter about slavery itself, and that it asks the slave owner to take back this runaway slave, not as his servant, but as a fellow Christian or a brother in Christ. And a slave relationship back in like Old Testament times was less of like, you know, as we think of it, like
It's
1700s.
still slavery.
It's definitely slavery, but it's more indentured.
There's no way that you can justify slavery in
I'm not
any
justifying
form.
slavery, but it was used as a way to pay off debts. So let's say I owed you like
I
a
mean,
thousand
sure,
dollars.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
I understand that, but like, it's still slavery.
yeah,
No matter the punishment to pay off debts, it's still like,
yeah. It's definitely not right.
okay.
But I don't
I just
know.
wanted to make sure that was right. But while we're wrapping up here, and I'm sorry we don't have more time because I'm actually really enjoying this right now. How would you say that the church is accepting of LGBTQ people?
Well, Pope Francis. I bet you love Pope Francis. He's definitely
Well, he's better than most, but I don't. Love is a strong word.
well. We have to remember that LGBTQ people, just like the rest of us, are sinners. We are
Yeah,
all
100%.
sinners, and that the Catholic Church wouldn't not accept someone for a different sin. Like even if you are a murderer, that doesn't mean we wouldn't accept you. So we have to remember that they're sinners just like us, but maybe sin in a different way. But in the end, we're all sinners, and we're all on our journey to find God.
And that's the who am I to judge?
Yeah,
Pope Francis.
Pope Francis said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Pope Francis is a little contradictory, to be honest. And then he also emphasized that same-sex marriage is unacceptable and that, quote, gender ideology is a threat to society. So I think, like, if you're calling stuff like that, like, threats and unacceptable, like, I'm curious how as a if you, for example, were an LGBTQ Catholic, how that would make you feel in the church.
Well, I would say that all sin is unacceptable. And that
Okay, this brings me back to another point of if God created somebody to be gay or trans or one of like, how could God's creation be in any way wrong?
well, I wouldn't say they're wrong. I would say they're more called to chastity. And that's like a very
But
old way
if
to look at
they're
it.
so my idea of homosexuality is that you're born with it. Is that
Yeah.
something that you would agree with?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
So wouldn't that therefore be God's creation that God created you to love if you're if the same sex?
I mean, yeah, he created everyone to love each other.
Love the same sex, you know what I mean? Like
Like in a sexual way.
yes.
Yeah. But I would say that you could also definitely be called to chastity. And if you're thinking about it
Well,
as
hold on. So if
wait, can I
God's
continue?
yes, for sure. Sorry.
If you wanted to have a sexual act, you have to remind yourself, is that what I want? Or is that what God wants for me?
Well, if God created you to be gay, then of course God wants you to be gay.
Or would he want you to be chaste?
So you're saying that God created somebody to have sexual attraction towards the same sex, and then said that you can't have sex with them. So they're like, I don't understand how that
Well, it's
works.
like if you look at it from a priest's eyes, he created that priest with
Just
obvious.
on this, we're not out of time quite yet, but I feel like final comments would be good. What
All
you
right.
just said, Thomas, would actually be a great final comment about what was it? The point you just said about
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure how I understand how God could create you to be gay. And then also say that being gay is unacceptable and an abomination in Leviticus is what it says.
Well, so what I would say is that it's talking about the homosexual acts, not the homosexual person. But just like let's say a priest, obviously, like growing up, that priest loved women, and he definitely probably wanted to have sexual acts with that woman. But it was in God's plan that he would become celibate and chaste and not have sexual relations to the woman.
So I'm a little
Like
confused
just
on how
like
you
a
can
priest
compare the
is
two.
just
I
like
mean,
a
it makes like in theory, yes, that makes sense. But I don't think you can compare a priest who, in theory, chose to be a priest, compared to a gay person who was born with sexual attraction towards the same sex.
well, in the end, God gave us free will to do whatever we want. But I guess you could kind of see it as God more calling you to that chastity and maybe even the priest. Like gay people are allowed to be priests and be chaste. Like there's gay priests.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna have to cut it there. Thank you guys. That was
Yeah.
a good
That was
debate.
actually
We'll move on to the
that
next
was a
one now.
good one. I really enjoyed that. Thank you,
you.
Brady.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will act as a moderator to the second debate. I'll give a 5-minute warning, and this debate will be open discussion and open note. To start, Gabe's going to state his claim.
So my claim is that the Democratic Party supports Catholic views and morals.
Great. Okay. 15 minutes starts now. Gabe, you can start.
You start.
Oh, I
made the
start.
claim.
Great.
Oh,
All right.
oops.
So about that claim, I want to say I almost half agree with you. But with immigration, I feel like the Catholic Church and the Democratic Party are almost in unison.
Mhm.
Like there's many Catholic statements that are saying that we need to welcome immigrants And in petitions, we're always praying for immigrants and
For sure.
stuff. Yeah.
And you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say
Absolutely. Okay.
with
Good.
immigration for sure. And then on the other hand, I would say that there's definitely like some non-agreements with, of course, abortion and yeah, I guess we can start with abortion and how
We can
that's
start with
definitely a
abortion.
disagreement.
Yeah. So I think if I actually I want to hesitate to start with abortion because I feel like we might be a little tempted to only talk about abortion if we start with it. But we can do a little bit. I'd rather talk about what for me what the Democratic Party really stands for above everything else is like universal respect for all people,
Yeah.
regardless of gender, age, wealth, race, anything like that. Uh, Everyone has an equal amount of respect in the eyes of the government, and everyone should have an equal amount of respect. And that is a very core value to the Catholic Church, as
Yeah.
far as I understand. I am not a super religious Catholic, but one of the things that Jesus preaches above all else, as I don't need to tell you this, obviously,
Yeah.
is respect.
I totally agree.
And so that is really why I think the Democratic Party and Catholics align so well, is because respect is their number one value. And I can understand there being individual issues that there are like abortion, which is a big
Yeah.
problem that there are different things about, but I feel like they do generally align.
Yeah, I would say like almost the Catholic Church is the independence of the political scene
Interesting.
and how they're not Democratic or Republican. And I love like some Democratic views, but also Democratic figures themselves. I don't know if you remember this. There's like some comment made at a Kamala rally about like God or something. Someone yelled out from the crowd. I've seen clips of this. Like Jesus Christ is the one true savior or something along those lines. And then Kamala said something like, you're at the wrong rally for that or something. And I've seen like clips of Trump,
Oh
in
yeah, I've
Catholic
seen some of
Church,
those clips.
in mass, and of course they could both like just be political stunts.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought up Kamala. I feel like I'm more educated to speak on a lot of stuff about her. I've seen her in interviews. I remember I heard her tell a story because I'm glad you talked about leaders because I think that
Yeah.
is really important. She is a pretty devout Christian or Catholic. I remember she did an interview and she said that after Biden dropped out of the race, the first person she called for guidance was her childhood pastor. And she uses religion to justify a lot of her beliefs politically. So she is Catholic. And so is Joe Biden. I personally don't agree with Joe Biden on a lot of stuff, but he is also Catholic. And so I think in terms of Catholicism, the representation in leadership, especially in the United States, is very well met. And uh, that's actually another one of the reasons I have that they are aligned is because the leaders in the Democratic Party are.
Well, I just want to go back to that. I would love to see Kamala like in Catholic Church, and of course, we're called to be private.
Mhm.
We're more private with our religious life, not to shout from the rooftops that I go to church and
Mhm.
all that. But I've also seen clips of Kamala saying like, "How dare we speak Merry Christmas onto people?"
Interesting.
And I don't know. I feel like that wouldn't really align with like a Catholic person.
I would agree with you. I haven't seen that, but
Yeah.
I agree with you that
Yeah.
that wouldn't. For
And
sure.
then for like Joe Biden, again, I don't really know about him.
Mhm.
But also, I just want to say, like, I would love to see any of these people at my church. It just seems
At your
like a
church?
Catholic church. And they're
Okay.
all welcome.
Okay. So I guess what I really want to go back to is the Democratic Party supporting the Catholic Church. And so now that we've talked about this stuff beforehand, we can talk about abortion. Now we
Yeah.
can finally go into it. So I want to talk about first why you think and obviously just to start, why you think abortion is wrong.
Well, first, because the Catholic Church says so. And
Okay.
of course, the magisterium, the third teaching, or the teaching office, one of the three kind of like infallible is the Catholic Church, the Bible, and tradition, sacred tradition.
Mhm.
And since the Catholic Church says so, and I looked into it myself, that I would agree with them on that abortion is definitely morally wrong, like 100%. And there's Bible verses. I forget which verse it was, and this might be taken out of context from like the context of the passage, but it was something like, "Before you created in the womb, I knew you," or something like that. You might see that on a lot of T-shirts around school. But the reason I think like abortion is wrong is because this is a chance for a life to be born. And I'm just putting myself, I've seen testimonies from like people who were almost like aborted, and like imagine like having to know that you wanted, like they wanted you to not exist. Like this is a human. Like imagine if you were almost aborted. Like I would never get like know you. Like, and it's
Yeah.
crazy that you're taking this chance of life away from someone, you know?
I totally understand that. And I definitely, this is one of the political debates that I can absolutely see both sides of, and
Yeah.
I can absolutely see that viewpoint. Um, the the thing that I want to talk about is how uh, I want to talk about how we don't, how although, okay, wait, here's what I really want to say. So you just brought up two different reasons that you uh, believe that you're pro-choice or pro-life. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One that the Catholic Church says so, and one that you believe it's a human life. That is kind of where I always have issues debating with Catholic people about abortion. If your justification for abortion being wrong, which is totally a valid justification, is that the Catholic Church says so, there's nowhere for this conversation to go
Yeah.
because
You would just say it is wrong. I'm gonna say it's
yeah,
right.
and
Yeah.
but if we're talking about it being a human life, then we can talk about where that human life starts, and we can talk about what someone's consciousness and experience is. And so that conversation is, just to take it back to the topic again, why I think the Democratic Party supports Catholic views and morals, because the Democratic Party is not saying let's kill babies.
Yeah,
Like and obviously, of course, I would not think that as someone who's pro-choice. What I think is that the human life, the consciousness, the potential for human life does not outweigh a woman's decision to make a woman's ability to make a decision about her own body and her own medical procedures.
Yeah. So you're kind of saying like when a woman has to make this choice, it's obviously like you to have the baby would be choosing like the route of suffering. Like it's obvious. It obviously takes a ton of suffering to make this child through labor and everything. What I would say is that when we look to the Bible, almost suffering when you're doing it for a righteous cause wouldn't inherently be a bad thing. Like let's say I suffered, and like if I died to save like someone else's life, my suffering, at least I would view it as a good thing. Is that if I suffer and potentially die for someone else, to die for another person would be like a very righteous and holy thing to do. And obviously, Jesus Christ, who's the holiest and the most righteous and the greatest of us all, like he suffered and dies, and he obviously shows that to suffer and die for other people is like righteous of you to do. And it's not that like in that suffering and death, you have to remember not to view it as like death, but almost entering your second life in heaven and with God.
For sure. I would agree that suffering for someone is righteous, but I do kind of want to flip that and say that I don't think any woman who ever gets an abortion is thinking, I'm so glad I get to like, no one's excited to get an abortion. Anyone, regardless, if someone gets pregnant when they don't want to, regardless of the outcome of that pregnancy, they are going to suffer.
Yeah.
Whether they give birth or they don't give birth, there is still suffering involved. And to discredit the really incredible sacrifice that women who have abortions, like it's an incredible sacrifice, because a lot of these women are not in financial situations to take care of children, or they don't think the world is in a spot where they want to bring a kid into it. Like, I don't think that is a selfish belief to have an abortion for that.
So you're saying like they wouldn't want to have a child because they knew they couldn't like provide for them
Exactly.
in the same way they would want to. That's 100%. Like it's a really sad thing that in the world we have people who just can't provide for like their children.
100%.
And it's like a really sad thing that has to happen and people have to think that way. But I would say that, even if you can't provide for this person, and even if this kid is going to grow up like really, really poor, you're still giving them like the chance at life. And it's not to say like, if you're poor, that doesn't mean you're going to stay poor for the rest of your life. And if you're poor, that doesn't mean you can't be happy.
For sure.
Like no one says that
Absolutely.
poor people can't be happy. So
Just to butt in here, sorry, there's going to be 5 minutes remaining.
So when I look at it as like you're gonna grow up really, really poor, you're also gonna grow up like you could grow up really, really happy, and even like through like incredible suffering in that poorness. It doesn't mean you can't find happiness. And I know I forgot the title of the book, but it's the happiest book in the Bible, and it was a letter written from Paul when he was in prison. But it's also called the happiest book in the Bible because you determine, your happiness in these struggling situations.
For sure. That's beautiful. That's really gorgeous. I think that's a really interesting stance to take for looking at that. Just to kind of, because we talked about abortion for a while.
Yeah.
I do, if you don't
Go
mind,
ahead.
circling
Yeah.
back to the claim a little bit. So, kind of talking about the suffering and the Democratic Party supporting Catholic views and morals. One thing we haven't really talked about is, I know that there's no official economic standpoint for the Catholic Church, but as far as the economy goes, that the Democratic Party is much more for distributing wealth and taxing the rich more and giving to the poor.
Yeah.
Would you say that aligns with Catholic beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, as you're called, you remember, I don't know if you remember actually, but there's a story in the Bible about a rich man who's talking to Jesus and he's saying, I've done all the laws you said. I followed all the laws. And then Jesus said, the final thing you must do is give away all your possessions to follow me. And the rich man couldn't do that. He couldn't give away those rich possessions. And if I'm looking at it from a standpoint, in class a couple of days ago, we were discussing, is it like okay that there's billionaires? And, I forgot it was a Democratic congresswoman or senator from New York who made a tweet about Elon Musk, or not Elon Musk directly, but that it's sad that we have billionaires
For sure.
who, it's okay for people to not be able to afford their insulin, but it's okay for billionaires just to be exploiting them,
For sure.
And I look at it, definitely, I agree with you that distributing wealth is like the number one thing to do. But I would also it would also be better if these people distributed the wealth themselves. So I support like the Catholic or the Democrats doing it.
For sure.
But then again, I also kind of like want the rich people to do it themselves.
For sure.
But
Yeah, for sure. How much time do we have left?
We have like 3 minutes.
Oh, perfect. That's actually plenty of time. So then, so then I guess my question for you is if you think do you still disagree with my claim, like half that the Democratic, and that's just because of abortion?
Not because of abortion, but also kind of because of LGBTQ standpoints on them, and just like I could never fully to say that they don't disagree, which had to mean that I fully agree with every Democratic standpoint, and I don't think I'll ever fully disagree with every Democratic standpoint, just like I'll never fully disagree or agree with every Republican standpoint.
Would you say you fully agree with every Catholic standpoint?
Yeah.
Everything the church says, no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So since we're at the end, and we can circle back to abortion, now that we're talking about actual, like, we talked about abortion, we talked about the LGBTQ stuff in the last debate. So do you think, in terms of which party would support Catholic views and morals more than the other, do you have a party you think would do that more?
Like you're saying, if I'm voting for Democrat or Republican, I would probably vote Democrat.
You would probably vote Democrat?
But I would also hope that there's a third candidate. And I guess we live in a world where there's a two-party system.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I would have to make a choice.
Yeah, but I get you. I think these are really important. I feel like we're so quick to... Are we up? Okay. I think we're still so... I feel like this two-party system, and that's why I'm really excited about this debate, because I feel like the independence debating is less frequent, and I'm really glad that we could have a conversation about this. So I would still say that overall the Democratic Party supports Catholic views and morals more than they don't support them. Yeah.
But I could also see, like, definitely I would say I would vote for Kamala over Trump. But of course, down the line, let's see in the next candidate or next couple of candidates, I could definitely see myself voting for Republican, just depending on what the candidate stands for.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a pretty common take, especially among Catholic people, because I feel like for Catholic people, the Republican Party has a lot of beliefs that do align better than the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and on that note, we are actually out of time. So that was great, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
sounds
for doing that.
Yeah, thank you,
Great.
Brady, for coming on today.
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation we
Yeah, of
had.
course.
Okay, so once again, Brady, thank you for coming on. It was super fun to have you on. I really appreciate the conversations we had.
Yeah.
Thomas, you want to finish it up?
Yeah, so be sure to follow us on Instagram. The handle is @Take2 Project Recovery. That's @TakeTWO Project Recovery. Stealing Gabe's line there. Normally does that. We'll give podcast announcements, show some debate highlights. We just made our first actual picture post with just some opinions about Trump and buying Canada and Greenland. Yeah, so I hope everyone had a great holiday season. I'm sorry we're a little bit late. I hope I can edit this in time to get it out by tonight. Yeah, can't wait to see you next week. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.